Hey guys, welcome back. So we are continuing with lesson 5, which is still citing evidence to support inferences. So we're on part 4 today on guided practice. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is write the title of the lesson at the top of the paper. So our title is Citing Evidence to Support Inferences. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, like always, is break down the title. So we have citing, which means it's a quote, and I'll put our quotation marks around that. And we have evidence, which means proof. And then we have inferences, which is an educated guess. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is look at our directions. And the directions say, read about the unexpected note Sam and Bill receive in response to their ransom request. Use the study buddy and close reading to guide your reading. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of things. So first, I want us to make sure we know exactly what we're going to do, so we're going to underline each part of the directions. So first, we are going to read about the unexpected note, and we're going to use our study buddy and close reading to guide our readings. Okay, so before we get started reading the rest of the short story, let's look at our study buddy, which is right here. So the study buddy says, will the boy's father agree to the terms of the ransom note? I'll underline sentences that tell what he thinks of the kidnapper's demands. Okay. Okay, so now that we have looked at what our study buddy says, let's go ahead and look over at the text, which is still from the Ransom of Red Chief. So I'm going to box that in for us, and we see that we have our paragraphs numbered. So I'm going to go ahead and circle these for us so we can make sure we are always looking at the correct paragraph. Okay. So one more time, I'm going to tell us what the study buddy says. That way we'll be able to read. So the study buddy says, will the boy's father agree to the terms of the ransom note? I'll underline sentences that tell what he thinks of the kidnapper's demands. So what I want you to do for me is go ahead and read this section of the short story yourself, and then I will come back and read it to you. So go ahead right now, pause the video, and read this section of the Ransom of Red Chief. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you guys have all read this section of the story. So I'm going to go ahead and read it out to us. And as I read it out loud, the sections of the text that are already underlined for you, I'm going to go ahead and underline them again in red. So these are the sections, the sentences that the study buddy underlined for us, because they let us know what the father thinks of the kidnapper's demands. So as I read this to you, I'm going to underline it again in red just to draw your attention to it. Okay, so let's get started. Gentlemen, I received your letter today by post in regard to the ransom you asked for the return of my son. I think you are a little high in your demands, and I hereby make you a counter proposition, which I am inclined to believe you will accept. You will bring Johnny home and pay me $250 in cash, and I agree to take him off your hands. You had better come at night, for the neighbors believe he is lost, and I couldn't be responsible for what they do to anybody they saw bringing him back. Very respectfully yours, Ebenezer Dorset. Great pirates of Penzance, says I. Of all the impudent, I glance at Bill and hesitate. He had the most appealing look in his eyes I ever saw in the face of a dumb or talking brute. Sam, says he, what's $250 after all? We've got the money. One more night of this, one more night of this kid will send me to a bed in Bedlam. Besides being a thorough gentleman, I think Mr. Dorset is a spendthrift for making us such a liberal offer. You ain't going to let the chance go, are you? Tell you the truth, Bill, says I. This little ewe lamb has somewhat got on my nerves, too. We'll take him home, pay the ransom, and make our getaway. We took him home that night. We got him to go by telling him that his father had bought a silver-mounted rifle and a pair of moccasins for him, and we were going to hunt bears the next day. It was just 12 o'clock when we knocked at Ebenezer's front door. Just at the moment when I should have been abstracting the $1,500 from the box under the tree, according to the original proposition, Bill was counting out $250 into Dorset's hand. Okay, so that is the section of the short story that we're going to be looking at. So now I want us to go back up to paragraph 1 and look at the sentences I underlined. So the first sentence is, I think you're a little high in your demands. So that tells us that the father thinks the kidnapper's demands are a little ridiculous, right? He doesn't think that they're very good demands. And the second sentence I underlined says, you bring Johnny home and pay me $250 in cash. So that's when he is making his counter offer. So he doesn't think their demands are good. So he's making a counter offer. So, what? So, his counteroffer is that they're going to pay him to bring Johnny home. Instead of the father paying the ransom, he wants the kidnappers to pay him to bring Johnny, for them to take Johnny back home. Because remember, guys, Johnny is very, very rambunctious. He's a wild child. So the father may or may not necessarily want Johnny back. So he wants the kidnappers to pay him to take his son back. So that's a little bit crazy, right? Okay, so make sure you keep that in mind as we read. So the next thing we're going to look at is the section out to the side that says close reading. So remember, guys, close reading is when you break apart the text, you analyze it, and you look for specific things. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to find and star the sentence in the letter that suggests how the boy's neighbors will feel about his return home. So the letter that the boy's father sends the kidnappers is only in paragraph 1. So this whole paragraph that I am boxing in is the letter from Dorset. So right now for me, I want you to go and reread paragraph 1, and you are going to look for the sentence that describes how the boy's neighbors will feel when he is returned. And when you find that sentence, I want you to put a star beside it. So go ahead and pause the video and do that now for me. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you guys all did that. So let's go ahead and look at this paragraph one more time. And just as a reminder, we're going to start the sentence that describes how the boy's neighbors will feel if the kidnappers were to bring him back. Okay, so let's see. That's going to be this sentence right here that I'm underlining in purple. So you had better come at night, for the neighbors believe he is lost, and I couldn't be responsible for what they would do to anybody they saw bringing him back. And I'm going to put our star beside it right there. So that just means that the neighbors dislike Johnny so much that they don't really want him to come back. So the boy's father thinks that if they were to bring Johnny back in broad daylight, the neighbors would see, and they might try to chase off the kidnappers and Johnny because they don't want Johnny to come back. So the neighbors don't really like him very much. So that tells you a little bit about the boy's character. We know the kidnappers can't handle him, so why would the neighbors be able to? Okay, so we're going to do the next box of close reading down here that I am circling, or squaring, excuse me. So this one says, which phrases in paragraphs 4 and 5 are clues that tell you how the two kidnappers feel about Ebenezer Dorset's offer? Circle these words and phrases. So remember, guys, we're going to look at paragraphs 4 and 5. So look over, find paragraphs 4 and 5, and go ahead and reread both of those paragraphs for me now. And you are going to circle the words and phrases that let you know how the kidnappers feel about Dorset's offer, his counter offer. So go ahead and reread those paragraphs and circle the phrases and words that let you know how Dorset feels about the counter offer. So go ahead and do that for me now. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you guys all went ahead and did that. So let's look at paragraph 4 first. I'm going to go ahead and read it for us one more time. And it says, Sam says he, what's $250 after all? We've got the money. One more night of this kid will send me to a bed in Bedlam. Besides being a thorough gentleman, I think Mr. Dorset is a spendthrift for making us such a liberal offer. You ain't going to let the chance go, are you? So, in this paragraph, the sentence that's going to let us know how they feel about Mr. Dorset's counteroffer would be this sentence here, the very last sentence. So, they think that he is being very cheap and that his offer is super reasonable. And he doesn't want to pass it up. So they think it's a good offer. And he doesn't want to let that offer slip by. So let's look at paragraph 5 next. Tell you the truth, Bill, says I. This little ewe lamb has somewhat got on my nerves too. We'll take him home, pay the ransom, and make our getaway. So, the section that we are going to find useful to us is right here. So, this little ewe lamb has somewhat got on my nerves too. We'll take him home and pay the getaway. So Sam is saying that Johnny, the 10-year-old boy, is getting on his nerves as well, and that they're just gonna accept the counteroffer, and pay the father to take Johnny back. That's the point that they're at right now. It sounds a little ridiculous to kidnap someone, make a ransom, and then have the father make a counter ransom, which involves you paying him to take the son back. So it's a little bit crazy, but that's what we've come down to. So now that we have performed the close reading, we're going to get ready to do the second part of part 4 on our guided practice. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, and we will pick up on the rest in the next video. So make sure you stop here and you move to the next one for me, guys.